Markets. Matthew Hornbach joins us. He's Morgan Stanley's global head of macro strategy. Matthew, it's good to have you here. And I think the question to ask with the situation like this is a little bit of the black swan question and also a question of the U.S. administration, whether its goals are domestic or international. What do you tell clients who are concerned about a destabilized world?
Thanks, Kelly, for having me on. Well, first of all, my condolences to the families who lost loved ones today. I think that when it comes to the administration, ultimately their goal is both domestic and international. And I think ultimately when investors look at the situation, particularly with respect to the bond market, which is my specialty, ultimately their main focus is on how the Federal Reserve is going to change its policies to address some of these uncertainties. And I think, that a destabilized world ultimately, if it ends up tightening financial conditions within the United States and more broadly, would have to adjust its policies in a more dovish fashion. It's not clear to me that a sad event such as this is going to, force the Fed to change the momentum that it currently has in its monetary policy strategy.
I think that remains the biggest question, especially setting the tone for hearing from the Fed chief tomorrow. Is this just a moment where everybody pauses to wait and see what happens in the weeks ahead instead of pursuing a tapering strategy or not? We're not overly connecting the events of Afghanistan to the markets today, but simply to point out the way that people often think through them. So if you're telling people, especially from the bond market's point of view, Matt, about the taper, do you change your forecast? What is your forecast at this point? What do you think we're going to hear from the Fed chief tomorrow?
Yeah, well, Kelly, we have the Treasury market underperforming into the end of the year. We think yields will rise. We have the 10-year U.S. Treasury yield ending the year at 1.8%. It was there earlier this year. We thought that was a bit too soon. But now we think the time is right for yields to start making their way higher again. The tapering is one of many factors that we think will drive Treasury yields higher. We also think that the economic data in the U.S. is going to play a key role. Of course, that also feeds into the Fed's desire to begin tapering its asset purchases. And that process will likely get underway later this year, early next year, and ultimately end up leading the Fed to raise interest rates.
Yeah, so you're not overly excited about whether it happens, in the near weeks or the far weeks. It's just kind of the general chain of events as appropriate. Matt, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you standing by this hour. Matt Hornbach is, as I said, global head of macro strategy at Morgan Stanley.